GP has greeted newborn parents with an extraordinary question about their baby. Is it trans? Meanwhile, it emerges that the so-called and allegedly cash-strapped NHS is now performing gender swap surgery every single day. So is the NHS now in the grip of trans ideology? Let's speak to the political commentator and somebody that previously identified as female, Oli London, whose book, Gender Madness, is creating a lot of excitement. It's available for pre-order, Gender Madness. And let me tell you, Oli London has won an award, folks. Yes, indeed. The WIBA Awards for Most Influential Personalities in the World of Social Media. And actually, your award relates very much to this story. What's going on with a GP asking parents of a newborn, is it trans?
I mean, it's just crazy. These are babies. And this is just one way that gender ideology is seeping into society. So first you have this one GP and the next it'll be more GPs following suit and stuff. And it's just going to get worse. We're seeing schools asking some children to state their pronouns, to state whether they're non-binary or trans. And look, these are questions that aren't suitable for kids. When you're an adult, you can make a decision about how your identity, but kids can't comprehend or they can't understand that. So I just think it's totally ludicrous that a doctor's surgery is asking about babies whether they're trans.
And you speak on this story with considerable authority. Give me a sort of potted history of your journey.
Right, so I had many different identity struggles throughout my life that stemmed from different reasons: bullying, body dysmorphia, gender dysphoria, and I did actually identify as trans. I had all of the facial feminization surgeries, which was very painful, so I did that actually.
So you became a girl for a while?
Yes, and I was living publicly as a woman, and that, you know, I got to a point where I was like, this isn't the authentic me. I need to actually step back and find the real me and find myself. And you know, it took a lot of time to find that person that was trapped within, but I'm very grateful now. And obviously, there are people out there that generally are trans and they felt like that their whole life. And, you know, I felt a certain kind of pressure because I use social media all the time. I was spending like 5 hours a day on TikTok, and all you tend to see is these gender ideology videos. And you know, that was me as an adult. But my concern is kids, when they're going online and they're being exposed to this in the schools, in the classrooms, it's harmful because kids' minds are very easy to mold. So I think, you know, if somebody identifies as trans, that's a decision to make as an adult, but kids cannot make that decision.
Is it grooming?
In some cases it is. I mean, if you're specifically targeting children with the purpose of trying to confuse them, that is definitely grooming. You know, grooming is quite a loaded word because it can, you know, if it's associated with the LGBT community, it can upset people. But when you're actually targeting children specifically, I mean, even with, there was cases in the US recently, Target, a supermarket, had this gender ideology pride collection for babies and toddlers. And that is what you would consider grooming or indoctrinating children, because it's planting the seed in their minds that's making this all over the place. On cartoons, they have non-binary characters in some cartoons. You know, on TikTok, they're seeing this. So it's this concerted push to try and confuse these children. And it's just not fair. These kids just need to be left alone.
Are these children not being educated into the fact that people do identify by different genders? Are critics of the US store Target, are critics of the NHS's gender-affirming care just dinosaurs?
Well, look, you know, kids do need to be educated on certain things. And, you know, kids are born without judging anyone, right? So they don't judge people. They don't have these preconceptions. So, you know, I get the argument where people will say, oh, we need to teach kids about this because it's equality. But at the same time, when you're teaching kids about being trans and non-binary in the classroom and constantly pushing that message, it's very confusing for kids, especially when they're teenagers, when they have peer pressure, social media influences, all of these different things combined. That's the real harm, and kids are susceptible. So I think, you know, pushing all of this stuff constantly is concerning.
Is there a war on gender?
There absolutely is. I mean, women are facing the biggest threat to their rights since the Suffragettes movement. And it really is concerning to see women that speak up for their rights. You had Professor Kathleen Stock, speaking at the Oxford Union recently, and trans activists stormed in, they glued themselves.
She needed security.
She needed security. And, no woman should have to put up with that simply for speaking their mind, speaking up for women's rights. So I think it's really wrong that there's this concerted push to take away the rights of women. And look, nobody had an issue with anyone's identity until recently. It was only when people started to try and push women into a corner to try and take their rights. That's when it got really heated.
Women's sport, women-only spaces, that kind of thing.
100%. So we just need to respect women, and, you know, everybody can coexist. You know, women, trans people, everybody can coexist. But it's about doing that in a respectful manner that's not going to take away the rights or the spaces of women.
What about those, let's say, a trans woman who'd like to participate in women's sport? If they're not allowed to, if they're precluded from doing so, that could be deeply humiliating, and that could send them into a depressive spiral. Don't we need to take their feelings into account?
You know, everybody should be allowed to play sports. Everybody should be allowed to compete. But the solution would be to have a separate category. So British Cycling recently announced that they're actually going to ban biological men competing in the women's category, but they're going to make the men's category open. So that's one solution, or even having a category that's for non-binary trans people to compete against each other.
But isn't that transphobic to have a trans category? You're effectively saying a trans woman is not a woman.
Well, that's the argument that I think trans athletes like to make, because they don't want, they want to be, you know, included as a woman. They want all of the same rights as a woman. But we have to look at biology. It's not fair. You know, competitive sports is something that women train for many, many years to do. And same with trans athletes, they have to train for a long time. But when they're biologically male, they do have a significant advantage. So it's about fairness, because you don't have, you know, doping in sports. You don't allow performance-enhancing drugs. So why would you allow somebody that has a significant advantage to compete against women? It's just in the interest of fairness.
How about the cover of Glamour magazine this month? You've been tweeting about it. You've got so many followers.
I do tweet a lot.
At Oli London, always worth a look. And this is an amazing story. It's a pregnant man on the front cover. Is that progress?
It's not progress, because firstly, this is one of the UK's biggest women's magazines. And, you know, it's offensive to women because, you know, how many women get pregnant every year? There's around 200 million women get pregnant around the world. So to you know, not include women in this, why not feature a pregnant woman? I know this person is a woman, but they're trying to claim to be a man. They've cut their breast off. Why not feature an actual woman on the magazine? I think it's deeply offensive. And also, I think it sets a dangerous precedent, because this person can't even breastfeed now. So what is that telling us? You know, that's actually going to cause problems for the kid and stuff. So I just think it's offensive. It's very distasteful, and it disrespects women.
We want to live in a world where if you choose to be Loretta rather than Steve, then we're going to love you for that. Obviously, you know, I've got no problem calling Steve Loretta and saying she. That's, for me, that's courtesy.
Yep.
But have we crossed the Rubicon now? Has trans ideology taken root in Western society? Is there any rowing back from this?
I think there is. I think we're starting to see a pushback now, because people have got to a point where women are getting very upset with biological men, women winning their prizes in sports. We're also seeing, you know, women's spaces being invaded when you have women's rights activists speaking, like Professor Kathleen Stock or Posey Parker, Kelly Jane. You know, they're getting attacked, or they're getting kind of angry trans activists turn up. And of course, this is a very small minority of this particular group. You know, these are the activists, just like any group you have, you know, Just Stop Oil people and stuff. They're the extreme elements. But they're the ones carrying the banners for the LGBT movement. And I think it's really harmful to the LGBT people, you know, the people that have had to fight for their rights for so long. And indeed, it's harmful to actual trans people that have had to struggle their whole life with gender dysphoria. So I think these activists are the real issue.
And this is the point, that the so-called gender ideology, which essentially says a man is a woman and vice versa, rather than respecting the way by which someone identifies, important difference. It's obviously very full. It doesn't really help the trans community, in fact.
You know, it's very damaging to the trans community, because, you know, until the last few years, they were just happily living their lives with no problems. Nobody was even discussing them because of their identity. And it's really sad. You know, I have trans friends. I'm a spokesperson for Caitlyn Jenner's organisation, Fairness First. I have many trans friends, and they're saying it's really difficult for them right now because of these trans activists and all these non-binary activists that have really hijacked their movement. So, you know, we need fairness. We need to respect people, of course, but we also have to bring all people into the conversation. Women need to speak, trans people need to speak, LGBT people. Everybody should have a dialogue. Instead of having these people, you know, these trans activists screaming at women, trying to take away their rights, let's have a conversation. Let's try and solve this so everybody is happy.
You've won this award, WIBA, what for?
So I actually won this at the Cannes Film Festival recently. I won it alongside Elon Musk's mother, May. And it was a great honour, because this was actually for my social media advocacy. And I've been working very hard. You know, I've dedicated my entire life really for helping people, for helping women, for helping kids. So it was really nice to be recognised for this and to win an award with such distinguished people like May Musk. So I feel very blessed. And I actually dedicated this award in my speech to all women around the world.
Oli, thank you for joining us in the studio. We'll catch up really soon.
Thank you.